I was incredibly intimidated when I was asked to do this seminar because I am in no way an expert, but I do have a lot of experience of working with children with difficult behavior. So I'm going to share a bit of my journey, but there's a lot smarter people in here. So feel free to, interrupt me at any time. If you have a much better idea, please share it. And hopefully at the end of this seminar, we can all at least have answers to next steps for our groups. I've never had to talk about this before, so my thoughts are quite jumbled. Can you tell me, are you here for general purposes or I have this one kid purposes? Can you raise your hand if you're here for general purposes? Okay, put your hand down. For the I have this one kid purposes. Okay, fantastic. If we do not answer your I have this one kid thing, then I will leave space at the end. And you can ask a question you can tell your I have this one kid thing, and we will all together, as a team, answer those questions so that you leave equipped, okay? Because that's what I really want you to leave with. With any seminar, I'm a sort of please interrupt me if I'm not making sense kind of thing, because I don't want you to come and waste an hour of your time trying to get an answer that I'm not giving you. So I'd rather you force it out of me, and if I don't have it, somebody will have it. So please interrupt as you go. I have done children's work in we used to call them battered women's shelters in Southern California. In women's shelters with sex-trafficked kids, with kids in Wales and Swindon, by far the toughest. St Albans up to Harrogate and now central London with estate kids and church kids, and all kids are different. And I found that with disruptive behavior, there are two different types of ways of dealing. And I find that with a combination, I get the most success. So there's the environmental conditions, and then there's the how do you squish a small person who's kicking off. And I find that those are two different things, because what happened to me, and what happens often, is you have a large number of children, and or a small number of children, which often can be more difficult. And you have a group of children, and you're desperately trying to cling on to control of the room. And so, I don't know about you, but when I first started out, it was like I had a big red button that was on my chest, and disruptive behavior would push that red button and make me go, I will now squish this behavior. And then it was all about this, and so then I became the person who was like, I need you to sit still, I need you to do this, and I was on top of it, and everybody would listen to my words because I was in control of the room. And I found that I could either have control of the room in a sort of very oppressive way, or I could spiritually grow them, but I couldn't do both at the same time because they demanded two different things. One was an authoritative person who was taking you all on my program, and one is a person creating a kingdom culture in which sin is dealt with in the same way within our culture as it is with God. And I found that I had to take the big button off my chest that would be pushed on my need to control. So that it wasn't about me controlling the room, but it was about what we are trying to accomplish in this room and the kind of culture that allows everyone to feel safe and everyone to flourish. And that means dealing with difficult behavior, but it also means creating an environment where those who may have difficult behavior actually can flourish as well. So for me, it was about enabling everyone in the room to flourish, not squashing difficult behavior. Because when my heart was on difficult behavior, that's where my heart's focus was. When it's on flourishing, then my heart's focus is here, and difficult behavior is just something I cope with to enable the flourishing. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what creates that kingdom culture environment to flourish, with particular emphasis on behavior. And then I'll talk about how do we deal with the kicking off ones, if that makes sense. One of the first tools I found, I feel like some of this is stuff you already know, so I apologize. This is truly just what's in my head, and you are much wiser than I am in most of these things. One of the things I found most important was that relationship was most important in all of my relationships with the children and in their relationships with their leaders. Because in the kingdom, it's all about love, and it's all about, it's everything in love. If I speak with tongues of angels and have not love, I have nothing. And actually, I wanted to create an environment of love so that difficult behavior was a violation of relationship, not a violation of rules, because that's how I believe sin is placed. And so I made a big emphasis on their relationship with their leaders and their relationship with me. That did every child know that they are loved totally by their small group leader? Does every child know that they're totally loved by me? Have I developed a relationship that I can pull them aside and say, you seem really squirrely today, are you okay? And they would feel comfortable to say, actually, I had a really bad week. How am I prioritizing relationship in my kids group? So that relationship is the center of what happens here. Because that's what I want their value of church to be, that it's a community of people who we love and are loved by. And if relationship isn't the center, then I'm running a program where they need to obey me instead of they obey me because of relationship. I'm always reminded of Jesus when he said, if you love me, you will obey my commands. And so often with kids groups, we just say, obey my commands. And I really want them to obey me and go along with the program because they love me and they love their leaders and they know they're loved. So relationship is a really key thing that I try to develop in my kids group. So if I have a child who's struggling, often I'll put them with a small group leader who's excellent relationally, who will then make them laugh and who will bring them alongside. I'd invite them to come early, not so that they can help and be powerful, more so that they can come spend time with the leader or spend time with me so that our hearts are close together again. So that when I say, hey, would you mind being quiet? They're being quiet because we're connected. Is really important. Another thing I found in just room control is clear instructions. The amount of time I've realized that disruptive behavior is just because I'm being unclear. Do you know what I mean? So from the sort of like raise your hands, and they raise their hands, they do something, and then they all want to talk at me. If I just say, put your hands down, then everyone stays focused. I don't know why. But if I clear instructions, everything, I find that behavior is much easier. Right, turn your bodies around, give me your faces, instead of just, can I have your attention, please? I find that sort of giving specific instructions deals with a lot of difficult behavior, because I'm not giving them endless amounts of space to do stuff. Consistency. One of the biggest things we found, we were really struggling. We worked on an estate, and we were finding consistency. The kids, really difficult, no matter what fancy tricks we played or how much discipline we did. It really struggled, and I found that the most important thing was consistency of leaders, I think because of the relationship. But what happened was everyone was on a rota, and so these kids, I came into a church, and the kids wouldn't give me their real names, and were bullying leaders. And I was really puzzled by it, because there was a lot of these kids, and they were completely disconnected. They didn't care. They would tell it. There was a new volunteer on that day coming in to try it out, and they cornered him in a corner and said, "We don't want you here. You're not good enough." I mean, like really, like full on, like what? And we couldn't. So we, structured down, and we start, enforcing behavior, and it got, it was hard for a couple of weeks, but it still wasn't working. And so we upped the relationship, which was helpful. But I began to notice that actually they didn't give their real names to the leaders. They would make up names to leaders because it didn't matter, because those leaders wouldn't be with them next week. No, they began to not believe that you would remember me next, or that it was even important that you had my real name. And they behaved, I don't want to say like foster kids, but I've seen that similar behavior in foster kids, which is, you don't matter to me, you're not going to be here. So we began to look at if a once-a-month rota was so disconnecting for our kids, and even on the once a month, they wouldn't necessarily be with those children in the room. We began to really look at maybe consistency is something that we needed to look at in terms of people in their life. You look at what we do in adults. We have the same senior leadership team that we see all the time up front. We all feel safe. We know who's our leaders. For kids, sometimes it's rotating through, and nobody knows their name. Nobody knows that they went to grandfather's funeral last week. Nobody pastorally knows them. So we began to look at how can we be more consistent with the kids. So on the rotas, we ended up having, you were always with these 4 kids, and you had their names. And we started keeping a record so that if we knew that the kids had a big test coming up, we'd write it down like a pastoral sheet that we would pass on. So the next week, the next small group leader would say, "Hey, it looks like you had a test this week. How'd it go?" Or, "Oh, I saw, you haven't been here for 2 weeks. Where have you been?" And we began to try to create pastoral tracking for small group leaders so that then they were known. They came in, they knew their names. They knew what was going on in their life. They recognized them. They said, we asked all the small group leaders to find those 6 kids that they had and find them every Sunday and say, "Hey, how are you doing? It's good to see you." Give you a high five. And when we upped consistency, that began to ease a lot of the disruptive instincts and some of our children. I found it's a special needs trick, but I find all kids like them. Visual timetables. Because I think a lot of it is about control and power. But I found that you come into my room and we do what I want to do for the entire thing. You don't know if it will be different this week because it's all down to what happens to me and what I choose. And then a different leader comes in and does whatever they choose, and the children feel quite powerless in that. But even when they come in and I say, right, this is what we're doing today. We're going to do some small group time, then we're going to do a large group time, then we're going to do a game. And I just let them know the running order of the day. Then they felt like they knew what was coming. They felt like they were in control. And I find a lot of disruptive behavior comes out of feeling like they're out of control, feeling like they're being controlled, feeling like they have no choice in this place, and it becomes a power struggle. But actually, if you know what the program is for today and what we're doing, then they feel a lot safer in that place.
So,
yes?
will you not then also on the other side saying, we're doing that again? You get people being disrupted because they actually know what's coming and they don't like what's coming.
Yes, but I find that I'd rather deal with it in one big thing than them constantly giving it to me every time something comes up. So if we know this is what we're doing, often I find if we're sticking to it, then they don't wrestle with it. It's when it's constantly different that they become more disruptive. If they don't know what to expect, then they're reacting to this. As opposed to if we do this every week, then there's nothing to be disappointed on because you walked in the door knowing this was the situation. When I don't give it to them, then it's like, let's play a game. Oh, I don't want to play a game. And then we have to wrestle. Then I'm busy wrestling everybody because they're surprised and they have to deal with their emotions. Let's just get all of our emotions out in one big go, and then we can just get on with life. The other thing I was really challenged about is we often do big age ranges. I don't know about you, but we didn't have enough leaders to do age-specific groups. We would all love to be able to run just a year 6 room, but how many of us have the leaders to run a year specific? And I began to feel like with all this environmental stuff, I just began to realize that I was dealing with disruptive behavior when actually I needed to fix what I was doing. And I found that a lot of disruptive behavior was coming because I wasn't challenging them enough. I wasn't intriguing them enough. I wasn't engaging enough. And so I was running stuff that wasn't challenging their heart or their mind, and then trying to discipline them because they were desperately trying to entertain themselves. And actually, I needed to differentiate my teaching a lot better. And so I began to think, how do I challenge this age group better with 5 to 11s in the room? How do I make sure the 11-year-olds are engaged in deep debate about persecution while the 6-year-olds are still learning a story? And I began to try to really think around, is every age group in this room being challenged to the next step? Are they walking in excited to learn something new or to teach this new thing? Are they having enough responsibility that makes them feel like this is an important thing to wrestle with? Am I intriguing their brain and their heart enough? And a lot of my behavior went away when I started to write different small groups for the older age group. Or give them a Bible and say, Grace, have a debate. You're on this side, you're on this side, here's concordance, have a good time. And forcing them to find scripture and argue against things and to really engage. A lot of disruptive behavior went away, not because I wasn't entertaining enough, but because I wasn't engaging enough. And often we try to up the entertainment level to get them engaged, and I think we need to up the engagement challenge level to get them engaged. Otherwise, you just exhaust yourself trying to do fun stuff, and it's not getting you there. It's not getting the kids there. I want them intrigued and engaged, not entertained. And the last thing in the environment is I try to make them be purposeful, because so often I'm trying to do the all singing, all dancing thing from the front. But where 2 or 3 are gathered in their name, there am I in their midst. And actually, we are a body of Christ. And so I began to, instead of just looking at my team, looking at everybody that's in the room and saying, well, I have a lot of pastors in this room. I have a lot of teachers in this room. They just happen to be 4, or they happen to be 7. And how do I have everyone be purposeful? So one of our kids, I would have sworn, my first Sunday, he and another kid, the teacher was talking from the front, and he walked, he was year 6, he walked straight up to her to answer her questions. She was like, okay. And I thought, he must have autism. He must have autism. He came up, there was another kid who was running back and forth around the room. And he they ran out the door, and it was bad. We've all had runners, and you're just like, oh, I'm a runner. So we dealt with it at the end. I was like, wow, it looks like you have 6 or 7, autistic kids. And she's like, nope. I was like, no, they're just rude. They were 6, 7. That kid was up for head boy at the local school, but just decided to not behave today, and was just really disruptive, decided to run out and create a problem. And so I sat with him, and we did relational stuff, and we connected with each other, and we began to intrigue him more and stuff. And actually, as his behavior improved, I then asked him to take on co-leadership of a small group of children. And I'll tell you what, he is faithful. He shows up every week. He takes care of those small kids. He is on top of all the other behavior stuff because he feels purposeful, because he was seen. And as he grew in his discipline of himself, he then got more and more responsibility. And so often our end goal of you being in charge of yourself, of you controlling yourself, is you get to sit there. Congratulations. Where actually, if you being a key part of this place is going on a journey of discipleship, and if you prove yourself faithful, then you get more responsibility, and creating purpose within a community created a lot less disruptive problems, because there were a bunch of people being powerful in a room instead of a bunch of people being passive in a room. And when you have a bunch of people being passive, then when they want to do something, they do something disruptive. Does that all make sense? So those are the sort of things I have to I ask myself first before I ask myself, how am I dealing with the discipline problem? And before I talk about what are the rules for behavior, I'm doing a lot of self-reflection of myself and my team of, are we creating an environment for engagement? So that when we have to deal with discipline problems, they come out of all of these values instead of a control program. I feel like this is going to be the shortest seminar in the world. That was half my stuff. So there you go. I have some values, because I feel like I've tried everything under the sun. We have done the everyone agrees on the rules thing, and then we go, that's not what we all agreed, which never really worked for me. We've done the praise, jar, which is helpful, but never really, I've done reward money, I've done everything. And what I found was I spent not most of my time, a significant chunk of my time trying to make sure I give everybody warnings. And what warning are you on? Are you on the third warning? Who's small group leaders going, I've already given him 2. And you're like, have you had 3? We're all having these massive discussions. How many warnings have you had? And I just gave up. And for me, I think I was reading, have you ever read Danny Silk's Loving Our Kids on Purpose? Yes, good. Jane has. Good. At least I won't be repeating myself. He talks about control and about how God in the Garden of Eden put a bad choice right in the middle of all the good choices, and he gave them the tree of good and evil, and that they genuinely had a choice of being in the garden, and they chose poorly, and consequences happened. But he didn't try to hide from them choice. He didn't try to enforce on them all good choices. He allowed a choice to happen. And in the kingdom, we are allowed choices. It is our choice to follow Jesus. It is our choice to come. If we choose not to, that's our choice. There's a lot of choice that happens in the kingdom. There's not a lot of choice that happens in my kids' room on a Sunday morning. And I began to realize that actually it was all about control. Like God himself is not a God of control. He's not trying to control all your actions. He's not making you a robot. We constantly are invited to make choices with him. But they're all choices. But the impression I was giving in my room was, these are all the rules. Obey all the rules, and we'll be fine. So I'm saying God's free and loving and great. It's not about the rules, it's about relationship with God. Except in this room, where it's about the rules, and it's about doing what I say. And I was contradicting the message I was giving about God. And if I want to create a kingdom culture, I've got to run a room like Jesus would run a room. What does it mean? Oh. I was really excited I was going to take us outside when it was all sunny, but I'm glad I didn't. And so it became about, instead of me wanting to squish the kids, is it hailing? Yes. Sorry, I'm almost turning into a tourist. Look! This is welcome to Sorry, I apologize.
We got the 3 seasons in one.
All at once. want to replicate God, and I want them to have an experience. And since Jesus, I really like what the Bethel people say about how in the Old Testament sin infected. So there was all the rules about being unclean, and when you touched something, you became unclean, and when you did something else, you became unclean. But in the New Testament, Jesus touched those who were unclean, and they became clean. And Jesus didn't have a fear of people's sin. And I feel that for a long time, I was afraid of people's sin. I went into a session going, I'm so afraid they're going to make a bad choice and kick off, and then I'm going to have to deal with it. And so I just don't want them to mess up. And so, I just didn't want them to, I was afraid of if they sinned, then I would have to cope with it, then it was going to be an issue. We're actually, how can I deal with it? That I'm not afraid of sin, and bad choices are a total choice, and you are free to make a bad choice in this place, because your bad choices don't infect me, they don't infect the rest of the team. You just have boundaries within choices. So I began to come at it like this. I don't do rules, I don't do a list. I do not tell them what they need to do and not do. I say, you are responsible for your own behavior. I trust you to be in charge of you. I trust you to be in charge of your emotions. I trust you to be in charge of your body. I trust you to know what you're supposed to be doing now. If you need some help controlling yourself, then I am really happy to help you. But I'm pretty sure that you can be in charge of yourself well. And that's my only rule, is you're responsible for your own behavior. And if you can't control yourself, I can help you. And that help looks different depending on how many times I have to help you. But that's about it. And so, for instance, if we're messing around and someone keeps touching someone, before I do a talk, I'll say, you need to sit someplace where you'll be able to listen really well. And you know yourself, you know your friends, move to a place where you think you'll be able to listen well. And most of the time, there'll be kids who will separate themselves from their friends and move someplace else. I also say if there's anything in your hands that's going to distract you from listening or focusing, then please put them away. And so kids will then choose. They can keep their toy if they want, but if you want to keep it, then you put it someplace that will be focused with it. If you need some help focusing, then you can choose to put it someplace else. And so there's always a choice. You can choose to keep your toy, or you can choose to move it someplace yourself that keeps you focused. If you need some help, then that means someone saying, hey, do you need some help with staying focused with your toy? And you can say no and fix it, or you can say yes and we can move it someplace else. If you say no, but you still are struggling, then I'll say, it looks like you're struggling. So would you like me to take the toy, or would you like to put the toy in the back? The choice is no longer you keeping your toy, but you still have choice. You always have choice here. Your choice is now, do you want to put it here or there? And if you don't want to do that, that's absolutely fine. If you want to stay with your toy, then you may need to go someplace where you can be focused with it. So why don't you take the toy back to your room with your parents, or you can sit with your toy in the back, but that means you won't be able to play the game next because you'll be busy babysitting your toy. What do you choose? It's all about what you want to choose, because I truly don't care what the rest of your choice is. For me, it's about constantly giving choices that I'm happy with, just to keep everybody on focus. So I tend to not discipline from the front. I train my whole team to do choices, and all it takes is someone coming over and going, do you want to keep your toy with you, or do you want to keep your toy to me? And you can choice yourself all the way out of the room, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to give you boundaries and give you all the choices you can possibly have within those. Because then you have kids, then you do have kids going, I'm going to keep my toy, but I'm going to move to the side so I don't distract other people. Fantastic, that's great. I'm so pleased that you're in charge of yourself. And it's just constant choices for me. The other thing is when you make poor choices limit your choices of freedom. So when you make a poor choice, well, unfortunately that means you can't play the game, but you can choose to sit here or over there. But playing the game isn't the choice anymore, because I can't trust you to be in control of your body around your friends. It looked like you were being a bit rough, and here we're making sure everyone's safe. And right now I'm not sure I can trust you to be in charge of your own body. So you can sit here or there, and then I'll see if I can trust you again for the next game. And we'll try again, because there's always a second chance. But I also make them clean up their messes. So, because so often you just have to apologize when you do something wrong, but actually we make a mess when we do things. When we make a poor choice that affects other people, we make a mess. So my year 5 girls who cornered the new volunteer not only had to apologize to him, but had to write encouraging letters about that person and their gratefulness for them coming, and they had to apologize to that person and to the spouse, because obviously that took up a lot of their family time trying to talk through that emotional experience. So these year fives had to apologize to the person, and then apologize to the person's wife, and then had to write a letter to that person saying how sorry they are and how affirming of that person they were because they tore that person down. And they are absolutely free to come back to kids group once they've cleaned up their mess. Yeah.
I do believe that there should be boundaries and choices, balance. You have to be balanced. If you give children too much choices, then I will sit there, you give me choices, so I don't have it. How would you control?
Well, because they have boundaries. They have choices within those boundaries. So we are here to listen, during the talk time. Everyone knows that what I expect from you is that your eyes are forward and that you're listening and engaging.
You should have like balance.
Absolutely. So they know what's expected of them. If they can't do that, then they can't sit where they want to. And you have a choice of the two places that they can sit. If they don't choose to sit there quietly, well, then they can choose to sit in this room, or they can choose to sit in the hallway. If they can't handle that well, then they can choose to sit in the hallway or upstairs. But it's fine for me, because right now we're all here focused on this.
That's all that in advance so that you know what the spirit of the moment.
Yes, so that's all it is thinking through choices. And I find that often in discipline, we don't think choices, we think, do what I say or I will kill you. And so, that's it. It's like, do what I say or be gone. And we have to come up with the consequences constantly. And so for me, I'm just constantly sitting, all right, if I have a kid punch another kid, what choices can I give them? Because choices empower them to be responsible for their own actions. For me, punishment becomes a power struggle. And they're much, and they can see the narrowing of their choices coming. They know that these choices are going to end. But if I give them a warning, life doesn't work like that. Life doesn't, you don't get to say when you're 12, I'm just going to try drugs once, and then, oh no, I had something bad happen to me. No one warned me. Life doesn't happen in warnings. We have to control ourselves, or else consequences happen. And we do have choices within that, but the choices always get narrower the poorer your choices get. So for me, there's absolutely boundaries, but how I enable them to engage with those boundaries is by choice. Because I really, really want to raise a wise group of children who know how to make choices well. Because if all I'm doing is controlling them in this room, when they don't have someone to control them, they don't know how to control themselves. And for me, self-control is a fruit of the Spirit, and I want to give them an opportunity to exercise the fruit of the Spirit well. Yes?
So I get what you're saying about choices.
Yeah.
You also need to almost have a cooperation of the person you're giving the choice to,
Yeah.
that they're willing to make one of the choices.
Yeah.
Because they might be willing to sit here and play with the toy rather than sit there and play with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do you deal with actually encouraging them to make a choice?
Yeah.
And following through on the choice they've made?
Yeah. For me, you have a choice. If you don't choose, then I will choose for you. And they know that really well too. So if there's very few times where a child will flat out refuse to choice, because what happens is then you miss out on the better choices. So I'll say, for instance, I'm going to play with a toy, if you want to play with a toy, that is fine. Right now we're playing a game or something, so you don't really need to be focused, but you're distracting people around you. If you want to play with a toy, that's fine. You can choose to sit over there with your toy back there. No, I want to sit here. Absolutely fine. Do you want me to take the toy away so you don't distract other people? I can keep it here or there. They say, no, absolutely fine. But that means it sounds like to me that you don't choose to be here. So do you want to choose to not be here by going out in the hallway, or do you want to choose to not be here by going up to your parents? Because it's absolutely fine. But if we're here, we're choosing to be here. And so what's your choice? And so for me, it's absolutely fine. If you choose to not walk upstairs by yourself, that is fine. I will help you do that by going and getting your parent for you, because I'm a person of choices. But I think what happens is we feel like we have to get their assertion. I'm giving you choices. And if you choose to not engage with the choice process, that's okay, but it then means you're not choosing to be here, because we're all choosing to be here. And if you want to be powerful and choose to not be here, that's okay. That is absolutely okay. I'm not going to force you to be here. But this is how we choose to be here, is by...
If you give the kids the choices all the time,
Yeah.
and say they don't want to learn, so they keep making the choice to go outside.
Yeah.
How do you? And obviously you're trying to educate them.
Yeah.
And obviously sometimes children don't make the best decision for themselves.
Yeah.
How do you end up teaching them, I guess?
I think that's the thing, is I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Because I think what we feel is is you're in the room, therefore I have to force you to learn about God. And when we have that in us, then I think they match faith with control. Where actually, it's your choice to learn. It's your choice to be here. It totally is. What I also give them is I give them internal options. So it's not always out. Because then, if out isn't a problem, if out isn't his choice, then you have lots of internal other options. So for instance, if they don't want to engage with the talk, it's absolutely fine. You don't even have to listen to the talk. But you do need to be in here because your mom's picking you up at noon, and we need to keep you safe. So that's fine if you don't want to listen to the talk, but it's really distracting if you're not listening here. So you can go to the back and you can not listen to the talk. You can lay on the floor, you can do whatever you want to, but you can't distract somebody else. Because 9 times out of 10 they're going to listen to the talk anyways, but they feel like I'm not forcing them to. And so it's that thing, because I think what I had to get to was I respect their choice of faith. I respect their choice of faith. And what I want to do is I want to take the kids who are going or intrigued with God, and I want to take them forward, and I want to say that you can choose not God. And there are consequences that for life, and that is a possibility. That is a total possibility. But what I want to say to you is that life with God, when you powerfully choose life with God, it completely is a wonderful thing in your life. And I think if they don't feel that they have a not choice, then they feel controlled into a faith that they're going to leave when they finally do. And I think that's my deep value, is that I value and honor their relationship with God no matter what they feel. And so you always have a way back in. So it's always feel free to come back when you... So I don't put them there for a specific amount of time. I say feel free to come back whenever you want to engage. And so they can wander back in whenever they want to. Because they can re-choose that. Because as powerfully as they can choose not, they can always powerfully choose yes. And they are absolutely welcome back. Sometimes they have to clean up their mess before they come back. You can't just knock over a glass of milk and then walk away and then come back later. So you may have to clean up your mess before you come back, but you're always welcome to come back. But I had to get over that fear of, I finally have them in the building, I have to teach them, and I have to cajole them, and I have to get them to do what I want them to do. And, actually, it's okay to not be here. It's okay. Some kids who are struggling, who just really struggle with the format, some of the kids from the estate will either struggle with the format or just get overwhelmed. And sometimes I have to be really good at overwhelming. What I also do is when you disengage, you don't necessarily disengage. One of my small group leaders wanders over to you, and then you have a pastoral chat back there. So if you're really struggling, and I'm like, feel free to sit here, or if you really just don't want to do that, feel free to go at the back. I don't say that from the front, but the small group leader does. But then the small group leader goes and sits with them and says, what's going on with you? You're feeling really stressed today. And you're answering back a lot. Are you all right? And 9 times out of 10, prayer ministry then starts happening back there, and they're talking and something bad's happening in life and stuff. But if I was so busy trying to get that kid to do what I want that kid to do, then I'm not focused on their pastoral spiritual development. I'm focused on their obedience. But actually, if you are feeling like you want to disengage and you know that a small group leader is going to come over to you and say, are you okay, what's going on? Then we can reflect on that and we can fix the behavior and we can come back in. And so I almost never deal with behavior from the front, because I think that's a bit shaming of kids. So it's all small group leaders coming in from the side and dealing with the choices, which also means I get a lot less pushback. Because if it's me and you in an epic standoff in front of 40 of your peers, then there's a lot more pressure to that as opposed to a small group leader who crawls over to you and goes, are you okay? Do you need some help controlling yourself? Are you okay? Yeah.
What age average you are working with?
I do that from 5 and up.
5.
5 and to teenagers. I do it with teenagers too.
So you are from 5 years old to teenagers?
Well, right now in our room, right now we have 5 to 11s in a room, but I do this in teenage groups as well. Yeah, they're responsible for their words and stuff. Yes.
2 questions.
Yes.
One is, do you parent like that? And 2 is, have you had kickback from Christian parents? Because it wouldn't be normal to set up choice.
Yeah.
Normal.
Yeah. Yes, I parent like that. The Christian parents who have had troubles with that don't have troubles with it once I explain it to them. So when they come down and they're like, you got kicked out for me. I said, absolutely no, I didn't kick him out at all. He chose to not engage, and he chose that he'd rather go sit with you in big church. And you know what? That's great. If he prefers a sermon to kids groups, then I think that's wonderful. Absolutely. Your kid has a total and complete choice of where he is on a Sunday morning, whatever will help him connect with God best. Do you feel that connecting with God best is what happens in the sermon? And the kid's like, no, I like kids group. I'm like, well, feel free to come back when you apologize and clean up your mess to everyone you need to apologize to.
But do the parents not say, but I don't want to? I'll be in kids group. Of course it's stay.
No, because at that point they go, yeah. At that point they get that I'm not going to do your parenting for you. I expect your kid to. And I also spend a lot of time saying you have a really powerful, kid who makes some great choices sometimes, and your kid chose this way sometime. But feel free to, I'm happy to help you, up there in your room if you need him to help engage up there. But he's more than welcome to come back when he cleans up his mess. I think because I don't get emotional about it, and I'm not stressed about it, and I'm really happy to help the parent coach through that. Because then we can sit down and say, it seems like your kid's struggling, and tell me what's going on with you. How can I help you control yourself better? How can I help you engage better? How can I help you meet with God better? And we can have that conversation, because it's not just about the behavior. It's saying that this just doesn't seem to be working, and I really want to help you meet with God.
So when he comes back in, how do you go through this cleaning up his mess?
Yep.
In this group.
Yep, sure.
And all that.
Yep. Well, that's why we tend to have a small group leader who on that day is just responsible for discipline.
That's the cleaning up the mess.
So when they come back, if they need to clean up their mess with me, if they were being rude to me, then the small group. So they have to wait back there. But if they want to, they can engage. They can come back in. But before we move into small groups, they need to clean up their mess. So therefore, I'll get a small group leader who goes like this, and I come over, and Johnny goes, I was just feeling really stressed, and I'm really sorry. And I'm like, I really appreciate that. Yeah, so we restore, and I just say our hearts are together, and I really appreciate you saying that, because I was feeling a bit stressed and feeling like our hearts were disconnected, and that just really made me feel like our hearts are connected again. I appreciate that, and I give them a little hug, and then we continue on. But it's not just thank you for acknowledging your error. It's thanks for putting our hearts back together again. And then I'll say, is there anyone else you think you need to fix it with? Were you distracting anybody that you think you need to apologize to? It's up to you to think through your mess, and I just ask them what mess they think they created and how they think they created it. So I don't tell them how they clean it up. A lot of times I'll just say, how do you think you need to clean up your own mess? And then they're responsible to do it. They're powerful kids. They know how to control themselves, and they know how to fix their messes. And I think they, at least the kids that I work with, really appreciate being trusted with that. I trust you to fix it. I trust that you can control yourselves. I absolutely trust. And I trust that if I'm doing something that's making it more difficult for you to control yourself, can you please tell me? And I tell them that. So sometimes I'll have kids come up to me and go, when you be it quiet for a really long time, so like in case I'm like listening to a kid's story or something, and I've let the room go quiet for like 2 minutes, they'll say, it's really hard to stay focused and be good because then I want to start talking. And so it would help me control myself if you would make sure that there's no long big pauses where we just are supposed to talk to each other and then get, and I'm like, that is a totally fair point. And you're right, because I expect you to listen to me when I want, but I haven't told you what to do. So I apologize for that, and I'll do that. And so they can help them control themselves better. It's a mutual respect thing. I respect them enough to respect their choices. And it makes me sad if they choose to not engage, but that's okay. Yes?
I have under fives.
Under fives?
Yeah, and the parents are with them.
Oh, yes.
So that's interesting when
Oh, the parents.
Just like
The parents, how do you deal with parent destructive behavior? Genuinely the same process. For me, I use a lot with under fives families with parents in. I use a lot of the culture stuff because I can do a lot of the culture stuff there. And so I do a lot of, all right, I want every parent to grab the hand of your child and bring them over and sit them on the seat. Right there, right? Everyone, come on over. Susie, why don't you come on over, grab your kid? Great. And if your kid gets up and run around, I really want you and your kids to have a good time together. So if your kid's up and running around, why don't you stand up and be with your child? Great, fantastic. And then we keep going. So I create that culture really better. Oh, Susie, she's going up. Why don't you spend time with her then, Susie? Or you could bring her back, totally whatever you want. And then I just do that because that's my value. If I set the value of the room out, if my value is parents and kids together, then parents and kids together engaged or parents together are walking around is totally up to you. But what are you choosing to do right now? Because it's up to you. And so I do find that. So the clear instructions is really helpful with that, and the relationship is really helpful. Because then I can come up to the parent at the end and go, I it seems like you were just tired today and you weren't following Susie around or on top of that. Are you okay? Can I pray with you? Because, normally you'd be on top of that and today you weren't. Are you? Which one implies the expectation is that you'd stay with your kid, but two, I get that it looks like you were having a bad day and I'm here to help you, and it's about relationship. So it's and visual timetables. Often the visual timetables for those rooms means that the parent can then go, if you're just quiet, we're going to play games next, and I then empower their voice to keep their child on track. And I try to prep them ahead of time. We're going to do this, and then after that we're going to play games. So if your child's getting a bit squirrely, you can always remind them of what's next, right? And then I move on. So I feel like I coach parents through the session. And I wait. I'm really good at waiting. We'll wait for everyone to come over. Susie, we're waiting for you. Whenever you're ready, come on over. And because I am here for us to be together. But I do that. Yes.
So like I'm going to do the open house, I have preschool
Right. Right. Right.
Well, preschool is age 6.
Yeah.
Ranging out between a P2 and a nursery child.
Yeah. Yeah. I find the choice is really helpful with children because with toys they can put those, if you bring in a toy, you can show it around, and then you can put it in the red basket or the blue basket, but keep it in the one ears. And I find that the choices, they're quite obedient to choices because the choices are very controlled. So it's not what do you want to do with your toy, but it's which basket do you want to put your toy in, which spot do you want to sit on. So I give them a lot of self-control techniques. If you're getting a bit wiggly, you can change to a different body position. And so then I let them choose, do you want to lay on your tummy or do you want to sit on your butt? And so I'm constantly giving them choices to help them control themselves. But one of the choices isn't going up and running around. Oh, that's not one of the choices. But you can come back to your red spot and choose which way you sit. And when I give them choices, with under 5s, I find they just naturally go, oh, a choice. Which one do I want? And they don't often pick choice 3. Because choice 3...
I need a B choice.
Yeah, A or B, 2 choices. Under 5s get overwhelmed with 3 choices. I tend to give everybody 2 choices because I have to be happy with both those choices. So it can't be, do what I say or I'm going to yell at you. It's just what. And so I'm constantly, everything has 2 choices. That still gets out of you what I want.
What if the child wouldn't choose any of his choices?
That's fine, then I'll choose. I choose red. And they go, no, blue. And you're like, all right, fine. And put it in the blue and look at you like. My kid used to be, I'd be like, buddy, it looks like you're not doing a good job of controlling your voice right now. So I think you need to go into your room to rest. He was 3 or 2.5. Do you want to be carried to your room or do you want to walk to your room? He would be like, I will put myself in my room. Slam the door. My child was constantly going, no! And running into his own room. Don't you dare take my choice away. I will take myself to my room. or he'd choose, you take me to my room. Oh, that's wonderful. I love you so much. There you go. Feel free to come out when you're peaceful and calm and ready, because I know you're best. And he would come out. But I think they like making those choices. Yes.
Directed choices.
Directed choices.
Choices, but you direct the choices.
Brilliant.
So you just give them what to choose. So
Yes. Great. Talk to her. She's an expert. She knows a real name for it. I don't have my phone, so I don't know what time it is. What time is it?
You got about 15 minutes.
I have 15 minutes.
Do you want to field some more questions?
Oh, yes. And the people who had specific kids. Did anyone who had a specific kid issue?
We're talking about choices again. I've got one child.
Yeah.
He's just about 3 years old. And he doesn't have any choices.
Right.
We give hundreds of choices.
Yeah.
Do you sit here or there?
Yeah.
Do you go outside? Do you sit inside? Time to go outside to play, but no. Do you go outside? No. Do you go inside? Do you sit me inside here?
Yeah.
To get the toys out with you? No.
Right.
Everything's no.
So what does he do instead? Does he just stay
Lying
still?
down on the floor, kicking himself.
Kicking himself. Does he hurt
He's
himself?
hurting himself.
Is he hurting himself?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay. And are you his mom?
No.
Okay. Just checking. Different answers for different people. And what is his parents like?
Parents are lovely. They are lovely. They understand. They are very supportive. Very educated.
And what do have you asked them about this behavior?
I did.
And what do they say? I'm fascinated. Now I'm just sucked into the story.
I think we asked he does at home, and they are actually not sure what to do.
So he is in control of himself at home, but not in control of himself out here.
Or everywhere.
Or everywhere. So when he's at home, he's great. When he's out...
No. He does kick himself at home.
Oh, okay. This is a normal thing. Right. All right.
Everywhere. When he's happy, totally.
Kicks himself? Like...
No, kicking like a tantrum.
Oh, okay. Right. So what I tend to do with this is if a kid starts kicking off in the group, I tend to do two things. One, I ask the permission of the parents to do this, so I talk them through my plan. So I'll say, when he starts kicking off, what's happening is that other children feel unsafe, they feel scared, and we want what's best for all of the children, not just your child, but we want your child to be safe. And so I would suggest that if your child is getting emotional or kicking off, what we'd like to do is give him a choice. Would he like to scream and cry in here, or would he like to scream and cry outside? And, well, no, not that one. Would he like to scream and cry outside, or would he like to be peaceful inside? If he can't control himself, then I'll make the choice for him. And what we'll do is I'll just pick him up, and we'll take him outside, and then he can continue to just have at it for as long as he wants. Because that's fine. When you choose to do that, then you choose to not do what's happening, but we need to move on. So what I would do is I would then ask the parents' permission to sign up to that, to come in, or we can go get the parent to come in and remove the child. And then I'll really happily sit with your child out while he works through that emotions and does that, and constantly ask them questions, because then I can do all the techniques that I would normally do with the child, which is ask them questions, start reading a book. I tend to start in that circumstance. Once I get them out of the room, I tend to pick up a book and then start reading it just underneath the sound line. What's that? Oh! No way! And then as the child gets quieter, I get louder, and so that I start reading a book out loud, looking at the pictures to distraction. But whenever you calm down enough to notice what's happening with me, then you can do that. And so I tend to then let them calm themselves down, because I can't calm them down. I can't talk to them when they're in that state, but I can make it a safe place for them to do it, and I can then engage them so that they can play with me. Or I'll start playing with a toy. I'll get one of their favorite toys that I know. Get some blocks out, start playing it like right next to him, so he's kicking himself, and I'm making a block going, I'm going to make a spaceman. And all the kids like, that's not how you make a spaceman. Ah! Wait, if you put the thing, ah! And then I get the kid, come on over. But the most important thing is to get parents on board with the plan, and have an extra staff member on the team. Or not staff member, but an extra volunteer who's available to do that, to implement the process for me. But there's always a choice. When you feel comfortable, when you've calmed down, are you ready to go back in? Or would you like to go in and sit down with the group? Or would you like to go in and sit down and just watch? Because I'll sit and watch with you. And we can choose how we come back in. That's how I would deal with it, but that might not be helpful to you at all. Does anyone else have any suggestions for her?
I think it depends on the age of the child and how it. But it's not necessarily from Sunday school stuff, but when I was teaching, I would often be one-to-one. Like I had a little boy that had ADHD, and then I had, for a couple of years, a little who was very challenging. She was like fighting and kicking, and that was full on. But I think in that situation, I think sometimes it's really helpful if you've got a child, if they're old enough and they're very disruptive in a class, to actually find out what it is. Sometimes, like you were saying, you have to find out why they're being disruptive, but also if you can't really distinguish that, sometimes it's good to say to the disruptive child, right, Johnny, I want you to go and speak to Tom. Tom will be a younger child. And you go, now he struggles with reading, so you could help him, but you obviously don't say that. You say, why don't you read a story together? So you're actually taking the child that's disruptive. Obviously, once you've dealt with the issue and whatever it is, once you've had the cleaning up point, the next thing is to say, do something where they can feel positive. Because they're with another child who's looking up to them and respecting them.
Great.
Because that really works. They call it like peer-to-peer mentorship. But the primary school that I was in Tower Hamlets, which is, I don't know if you know about Tower Hamlets in London, it's the roughest council, but so they used to do that a lot. and then they rolled out everywhere because it was
Yeah.
so successful. So we would often have like a 12-year-old, you know, like the top of the primary school
Yeah.
classes, come all the way down to the sort of 5-year-olds. So maybe that's something that could work in church.
Yeah.
If you have separate groups, obviously
Yeah.
if you've got everyone in the same class,
Yeah.
you might still
It's
be able to do it,
Yeah.
but it's not as good as that
Yeah.
going somewhere
Yeah.
else.
Because kids will then see them being scary people coming too close to me, but if it's a different
Yeah,
group.
it always worked because it kind of calmed down their lack of feeling resourceful.
Yeah.
And it kind of said, no, you think you're a troubled child, but you're
Yeah.
not a troubled child.
Yeah.
You have great skills that you can teach
Yeah.
another child. It's sort of
Yeah.
saying that indirectly so
Yeah.
that their confidence becomes better. And then they often found that that really helped
Yeah.
ease, or at
Yeah.
least start a conversation of why are you behaving
Yeah.
and acting up.
I also find that we can talk about the emotions as well. So it's not, because it's not just about your behavior. You're not a bad kid. You're just
Yeah.
having a lot of emotions right now. And so sometimes I can get them to say, you know, with anger, with small people, I'll say, are you feeling angry? Or are you feeling sad? And so sometimes they can tell me what they're feeling. They can't tell me what choice they want to make. They're out of their mind. But they can tell me, I'm feeling angry. And then I can help with saying, oh, angry is really tough. And at least then we're dealing with our emotions. We're not dealing with you being a bad person.
Because also sometimes emotions can be, it's a bit like what you were saying sorry if you weren't in the former talk, but what you're saying about with prayer and really understanding what they're really saying.
Yeah.
Same with emotions. So I know me as an adult, if I'm angry, I cry, and that's so annoying.
Yeah.
Because then you go, oh. When really, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
But it's the same for kids. If you can see an emotion and think, oh,
Yeah.
you know, they're kicking off, or
Yeah.
so it must be X, and then you'll actually find out is that they're sad about something, or, you know, they're really overexcitable, but,
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of, because their emotions, when they're really young, it's like anything, like with hormones,
Yeah.
they're all over the place, so they
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
what emotions equals what. You can be happy, sad, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Angry,
Yeah.
whatever, it can all get mixed in together.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I found with kids, my kid was deaf for 2 years, and so we were completely on sign language for 2 years, which meant that a lot of times I didn't know what was going on with him because we hadn't learned that sign yet. And so trying to figure out what he's feeling, then give him a sign for it, and then teach it to him was difficult. And a lot of times, sometimes as Christians, we have this wonderful thing because the only one who actually knows what's going on with that kid is God. And the amount of times in kids ministry and as a parent, I'll just go, God, I do not know what's happening with this child. Can you please give me your wisdom? What am I supposed to do with this? And God will give me something that I would never have thought of. So there's been times where I've been in a group where this 4-year-old is banging his head against the wall. And God said to take a pillow and put the pillow between that kid and the wall, but let the kid keep banging his head. Which I was like, okay, so the pillow. And then he said, and then just keep saying, your mommy loves you so much, your mommy loves you so much. And so I just sat and just did that, and the kid calmed down within like 30 seconds. And evidently, he had just had a fight with his mum right beforehand, and he was freaking out. But I never would have known that had God not told me what to do. And that kid calmed down really fast, and we got to pray with that, and then we got to tell the mother, and then they got to have reconciliation, and we prayed for them as a family, and it was all this wonderful experience, but only because I had no idea what to do with this kid, and the only thing I could do was go to the God who knows what's happening, and find out what's happening, and find out what I'm supposed to do next. And I don't know about you, but I forget that in the situation. I'm like, what choices can I give? How can I do? I have a consequence, and I'm busy running a room, and I forget that actually the God of the universe who created this child knows exactly what's happening with this child, and knows the wisdom for what's the next step. And to go to him in that moment, I found is really releasing for me. Did anyone else have a one that they wanted to talk about that we haven't covered? Yes. Tell us, come forward and tell us about this one.
Yes, right, so imagine you have, say, 10 kids in your room. You're trying to, Sunday school bring
10 kids between the ages of?
let's say 3 to 5.
Yeah, hypothetically, 3 to 5, yes.
You have two that need choices constantly. Let's say you give choices. What do you do with the other 8?
Yep.
Why are you giving choices?
Are you alone in the room?
I may or may not be.
Right? Probably not.
No, I'm not. No, let's say there's 1 or 2 helpers.
If there's 1 or 2 helpers, I make the other helper totally enjoys. Wow, it's like I just started speaking in Israeli. That's not even a language. Wow. Stand by. Let me re-speak in English. What I would tend to do is I would make that other person get them way up to do on choices and then say, I'm going to ignore these two children except for positive encounters and you just handle those ones. So that you have one person totally focused on choices and I have the other 8. Now, that's not ideal, but at least I have the other 8 because the most important thing is that the room feels like it's moving forward. Engaging is way more fruitful than not engaging. And so the exciting stuff continues. And the kids who are focused and moving get your face and they get the praise. And then that means when the kids that are doing great get your praise. And when they're not doing great, it's like they go invisible and somebody else deals with them while you're dealing with the rest of the positives. And then when they're behaving great again, wow, they get some praise. And then it just continues on. So that the person responsible for the spiritual development of the room is not the one who's doing the side discipline, because that's when it becomes a stress. If you're the only one in the room, then you shouldn't be due to ratios. But if you're
For example, if you are in a 1:8 ratio,
yes,
your perfect ratio,
right.
you're alone.
If you're perfect,
somebody's having
right.
kicking off.
Then what I do is I tend to do. I'm trying to think of the word. I feel like my brain is shutting down. I tend to use situations, so I'll say, right, so I want everybody to turn to each other, and I want you to have a discussion about who would win in a fist fight, Moses or Pharaoh, go. And then I will come over here. Yeah, so they'll be like, oh, I don't know. They'll have a conversation. I come over here and say, can you come here for a second? Seems like we're having some problems, we're having some difficulty, and how are you feeling emotionally, and what's happening here? I need you to make some choices right now. Great, what'd you come up with? And then I can come here and so I can deal with it there. But that they then move on to something that then can move on to something instead of it becomes about you and me. Wah, 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 and we become the power struggle. So I would tend to then do that. Or I'll say, I'm going to have a chat with you in a little bit, okay? And then I come back, which is enough for them to go, oh, I'm in trouble, without me having to do anything for 5 minutes. And then when it's time for us to have a chat, then we'll have a chat about that. But I've clocked you and I are going to have a chat in a little bit. And in the meantime, this is what the next activity is going to be. Why don't you plan a sermon, do a Bible study, whatever. And I always keep those in my back pocket, so I always plan a back pocket thing if I think I might need it, so I can always go to that instantly. Right, grab some papers in the back. Here's your next 5 minutes. And I have this thing. But we haven't answered your question. We haven't even answered your question. You haven't even finished your question. Keep talking. Have we answered all of your things?
Yes, you are.
Brilliant. Great.
You made a choice, didn't you?
We made a choice. Fantastic. Are we at the time?
Yeah, sure.
We're at the time. Thank you. Can I just pray out?
Well, thank you for all of your great engagement with Rachel today. I think we're all walking away with some ideas. Definitely, it's good. And I just love your approach, Rachel. I was just having a conversation with someone recently about how we're not saving people so that they can become upper middle class citizens. We're saving people so that they can have a relationship with Jesus. And that counts with our kids too. Is everything we do with behavior and discipline is meant to create a better relationship between that child and God. And so thank you so much for your wisdom. That's wonderful.